Yes, what were you saying?
When you were saying how when Moshe came to be the Redeemer, it wasn't like a hard transition. Like you were trying to correlate it to Trump winning the next election. Could you go into that more so I could understand the correlation you were trying to make?
Can you repeat that?
Okay. You were saying how Trump, you think that Trump would win the next election because when Moshe came to redeem Bnei Israel, it wasn't that the Bnei Israel were kicked out. It was more of a smoother transition, which is why he points to Trump getting reelected.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that? Could you just go into that a little more? Like what happened? Yes. Elaborate on what happened in Mitzrayim that you think that.
You want me to elaborate?
Yes.
Well, we noticed that exile, which I went into pretty extensive, what is Golus? You know, the concept of Golus and so on, and who are the ones that we go into Golus about. I went to a very brief summary, of these ideas and so on. But in the end, the Jews go from one Golus to the next, and there are reasons for that, because one nation offers the Jews a certain path to bring the tikkun. But when that path is closed or gone or accomplished, then God sends them to another nation, you see, so that they can bring the tikkun in that nation. Because each nation has their own way, which I'm going to talk about because I'm in the middle of a shiur about Sfardim and Ashkenazim, if you recall from last week.
Right.
Right? But anyway, so normally the way it happens is that something bad happens and the Jews get chased from one Golus to the next. That's usually the way it happens and so on, and that's almost always been the way it does, You talk about the Spanish expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492. You're talking about in the 1000s. You're talking about from England. The Jews have been kicked out of every single nation in Europe. Every one. What's interesting is that the Jews have never been kicked out of America. Because, like I say, America is the most gentle form of the Golus. In fact, it is so gentle that Jews easily assimilate. This is one of the very bad things about America. It's so easy to assimilate because, America is such an accepting country. I mean, that's one of the good things about America. But for the Jews, it means that the Jews constantly assimilate. They intermarry, they assimilate, and so on, which in many ways is really terrible, you see. However, the real question which I try to deal with is we know America also has to end because America is also a galut. We know that. And like I pointed out, Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says America is the last galut, which means that America also has to end. Most people don't realize that. See, they think, well, America's a great country. You really can make a great living, enjoy life, as they say. And no, the galut will never end here. This is the promised land. But the problem is that the galut must end no matter where. So if Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says that this is the last one, then obviously the concept is that it must end here also. It's very hard for people to come to terms with that because it is very comfortable here. So that is the question that I try to deal with. How will it end? So the model for all of this, when you think about it, is Mitzrayim, is Egypt, because it says Hine in Kiddusha, Hine go'alti etchem achrit kereshit. Behold, I will redeem you. The second redemption will be like the first. That means that the same Geulah that took place in Egypt will repeat itself in the last Golus, which is the redemption itself. So Moshe Rabbeinu, when he came to Egypt, it's not that the Paro threw out the Jews, not at all. He wouldn't let him go. So what Moshe Rabbeinu basically did is he had to pull the Jews out of the Memtet Sha'arei Tumah. because that was the big ikov. Ikov means obstacle, you see. So Moshe Rabbeinu, how did he do it? Well, what he did is he raised the consciousness of the Jewish people. And of course, the way he did it was through the Makot, through the 10, plagues or whatever, you see. And that's where he raised their consciousness. See, most people don't realize that it's not just that the 10 plagues, struck the Egyptians terrible, which they obviously did. But you should know one thing. With each Makkah was a tremendous Gilui, revelation. Because like I said, each Makkah really was a Sfirah, 10 Makot, 10 Sfirot. Each Makkah was a physical expression of a Sfirah. So what the Makkah did is not only it happened physically, you see, but what it also did is it revealed some aspect of the Sfirot, which is some aspect of the Gilui, of a revelation of some aspect of God, His power, you see, his attributes or his characteristics and so on. So essentially, even though what Moshe did was the Esra Makot, which is basically to punish the Egyptians, which obviously happened, the real concept is that he raised the consciousness of Jews in terms of each Makkah, which was really each Sfirah. That's what he did. So therefore, what do we see? That the Galut in Egypt ended through what's called in Kabbalah Mochen. If you ever heard that term. Mochen is a rise in awareness or consciousness. And that really has to be, you see. So what happened is the Jews achieved a tremendous understanding, awareness. In Kabbalah it's called Mochen, which means brains, right? But what that really means is consciousness that they never had before, you see. In fact, the remez for that, where's the remez for this, the allusion to this? Because it says by Choshech, it says, U'lechol b'nei Yisrael, and to the entire children of Israel, Hoya or b'moshvotam. There was light in their dwelling. Now that light means that there was not just light, because they had darkness, we had light, but light means that there was tremendous amount of understanding, what's called enlightenment, you see. And that happened with every Makkah. So what do we see? That the Geulah, or rather the Geulah, the redemption, which means the last Galut. And by the way, Egypt was supposed to be the last Galut, if you remember what I said on the Shiur and Shavuot, is that Egypt was really the last Galut. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was almost the Mashiach ben Yosef, and had they not sinned the golden calf, he would have been Mashiach ben Yosef. And the Luchot Rishonot, the first tablets, would have been the Or Rishon, or the Or Mashiach, the Messianic light. So we see therefore that Egypt was supposed to be the last Galut. It's only when Egypt failed that God had to say, well, you failed, so you have to go back in Galut, at least the Galut of that time. But that Galut will be 4 types. You see, because there are 4 worlds of Tum'ah. And each Galut, Bovel, Babylon, Greece, Persia, Greece, and Rome, each one is a specific Giloi, revelation of God. As I pointed out in the Shiur, the different environments that a Jew can find himself, and therefore the different mistakes or errors that he can make. But essentially, Egypt was supposed to be the last Galut, and Moshe Rabbeinu would have been Mashiach ben Yosef, you see. And of course that was obstructed because of the sin of the golden calf. However, before that, what do we find? That power didn't chase the Jews out, which is normally what happened after each one, you see. What the Mashiach did is he came and changed the entire consciousness of the Jewish people. Well, same thing now, in every Galut, when Jews go from one Galut to the next, so the way it's going to happen is that the Jews get chased out because a tremendous rise in anti-Semitism, you see. And therefore they're going to go from one galut, and they won't be able to stop it. And they'll have to flee. In every one, the Jews fled. The Jews were expelled from every single country in Europe, which was astounding, you see. If you look at medieval Jewish history, for all the way from the time of the Crusades, which goes all the way back to 1066, I think. In every nation, they were kicked out, you see. And that's the way God got rid of the Jews in any given country, in order to bring them to another country, and therefore they would have to remain righteous, and hopefully that would bring a tikkun for whatever that country represented, which I will talk about. However, the Geulah, is different, because the concept of the Geulah is not to throw the Jews out and to go into another galut. What it is to go from galut, into what? Into freedom. And that's the concept of moichin, consciousness, tremendous awareness of God, you see. And that's the concept. So if that's the case, it doesn't require the one nation to throw them out, you see, because what have they learned? Nothing. There's no rise in consciousness when the Jews are thrown out of one country. Then they go to another country and they struggle for years. When the Jews got thrown out of Spain, the Sephardim, that's where they all come from, Sephardim and so on. Originally the Sephardim, basically actually all the Jews came from Babylon, you see, and then they crossed over into Africa. They were chased from Africa, North Africa especially, over into Spain. And then from Spain they got chased out. And then they crossed Europe, they went east. And that's the origin of Ashkenazi Jews, you see. So many the Jews who settled in Turkey, right, Turkey and Italy and so on, they were Sephardim. But the Jews that went north to Germany, you see, or France, or the northern countries, they became Ashkenazim. You see, that's when you really begin to see the difference. Therefore, what's the point of throwing the Jews out? You see, there's no rise in consciousness. But if the point or the purpose of Mashiach is to do what? It's not to get the Jews thrown out, you see. But the purpose is that Jews should begin to understand, the Messianic light, which is the beginning of a rise in understanding and consciousness. Like it says, Kimol Ordea, that the earth will be filled with the knowledge of God. Then it can't be that way, basically. Can't be that the Jews are thrown out of one country into another. There has to be some type of rise of consciousness, what's called Gilui, Yichudoi, the revelation of the oneness of God or the absolute control of God. That can only be if the one who takes them out of the Galut is Mashiach, especially Mashiach ben Yosef. So, with that reasoning, comes out like this. If America is the last Galut, which is what Chaim Volozhin, who's the greatest student of the Vilna Gaon, and believe me, he knew what he was talking about. If that is the last Galut, then obviously it has to end. But if it's the last Galut, it has to end not with being expelled from the country, because what's the whole point? There has to end in terms of some type of a messianic figure that is going to come and somehow begin to change the concept of Mashiach, of the awe of the Mashiach. You see. And actually you see that because the Pasuk says, it says in the beginning of the Torah, V'ruach Elokim melachefet, in the second Pasuk of Breshit, and the Spirit of God, melachefet, hovers al pnei sohoim, on the face of the deep. So the Baal HaTurim says that the gematria, the numerical value, right, of Ruach Elokim melachefet, the Spirit of God hovers. Well, what is the Spirit of God that hovers? And the answer is, he answers, that the gematria of Ruach Elokim melachefet, that the Spirit of God hovers, refers to the Mashiach. And he says that the gematria of Ruach Elokim Merachefet is the same gematria of Zuhi Ruchai Shel Melech HaMoshiach. This Ruach is what? Is the spirit or the neshama of the Melech HaMoshiach. It's the Mashiach himself. You see? And we know also, which is fascinating, that it says in the Pasuk, right, that the Eshpoich Ruchi al Kol Boso. You see, God says, famous, and I will pour my spirit on the nations of the Ruch al Kol Boso, on all mankind. Who's that spirit? You see? So what God is going to do is pour his spirit. Who is that spirit? Who is the Ruach? Eshpoich Ruchi, and I will pour my spirit, right, on all the nations. What spirit? That's the Mashiach. The same Ruach Elokim Merachefet al Pnei Hamoyim, the same Ruach that God said that hovers over the face of the deep. That Ruach is where God says, I will pour my Ruach, my spirit, over the entire land. That is the Mashiach. Now, if you think about it, what does that mean? What does it mean that he was going to pour his spirit, that he's going to bring the Mashiach? Why? And the answer is, because the entire concept of the Mashiach is to do what? Is to raise the consciousness of the Jewish people. And Agav, incidentally, the entire world. So what does it mean that the Jews will be chased out of the land? What does that mean even, if this is the Last Galut? So it has to be basically that the way the Jews will will exit is not through suffering or, into another exile, so to speak. They have to be redeemed, not thrown out. You see? Because, like I say, the essential idea of the Mashiach is what? Is to raise the consciousness, to enlighten the Jewish people about God. Not to get them thrown out. That was. But that's not necessary anymore, you see. Therefore, if you think about it, America, if this is what's going to happen, then it has to happen in a way where God will pour his spirit out through the Mashiach, you see. And as a result of that, then the Jews will become aware. In fact, there is no other way. There are two things that have to happen, which I had mentioned many times in the previous Shurim on current events. The Jews must be rehabilitated. It's not enough where a Mashiach ben Yosef will come to the Jewish people and look at them and watch them in such an incredibly low state of tum'ah. Think about that. 11 million Jews are gone. It's unbelievable. Out of the 14 million Jews that live today, 11 are gone. Think about it. The Jews all over America, millions of Jews are gone. Canada, Mexico, South America, Europe. There are so many that are gone, you see. So there's only 3 million Jews left. And of those 3 million, how many really know the Torah or are really God-fearing and so on? Not many. So the Mashiach, is he going to come to a Jewish people that is so bankrupt in Judaism? No. So what happens is there has to be what's called an enlightenment. There has to be a change in the Jewish people, you see. And where is it going to start? So that's the famous posuk in Nitzavim, you see, where it says that even if you're outcasts, afilu nidochacho, even if your outcasts are at the ends of heaven, it says in Parashat Nitzavim that even if you're Jews, your outcasts, which is the Galut, are at the ends of heaven, and that's pretty far out, right? Mishom, from there, not from Eretz Israel, from there means in the Galut, ikabetzcho, I will gather you. You see? And when God says, I will gather you, right? How? And then it says, umishom, and from there, not from Eretz Israel, but from the ends of heaven, God says, yikochecho, I will take you. What do you see? Is that the awakening, is the Enlightenment, the beginning of the rehabilitation of the Jewish people, does not begin in Eretz Israel. It will begin in the Galut itself, you see. And there's ideas for that, because God wants to demonstrate His power, that to Him it doesn't make a difference if you are, you see, in the darkest klipa, in the darkest dungeon. It doesn't make a difference to God. He can come down in the dungeon itself and take you out. He can go down into the utter darkness, the pits, and rescue you. That's God, you see. And one of the greatest of all the miracles, which when it begins to happen, will stun all the Jewish people, is somehow there's going to be an awakening toward God. There's going to be a thirst to know God, somehow to do tshuva. Now, the one who will do that in some ways is Mashiach ben Yosef. And that's what it means, V'eshprich ruchi, and I will pour my spirit. And that's the Mashiach, you see. So the Mashiach combined with the Ruach, with the Spirit of God, which basically He is the Shliach, in some way will change the mindset of the Jews, which to us will be an absolute miracle. And to show His incredible strength and might, He will do that when the Jews are in Galut, not when they're in Eretz Israel. Just like He did Egypt, right? Where did God do it from? You know, He didn't wait. What He could have done is done what? I mean, it's not a problem for God to take the Jews out of Egypt. You think the only way He could have done it is with the plagues? Of course not. God could have brought Corona, right? He could have brought COVID-19 on the Egyptians, right? And all of a sudden, all the Egyptians would have dropped dead, or a lot of them. And guess what? They wouldn't have had the power to keep the Jews, because so many of them would have been decimated. You see? And then when the Jews would rebel and leave, right? So then you can say, well, then God would appear to them and raise them in spirituality. No, that's not what He did. He went into the tum'ah of Egypt, and He pulled them out. You see? I mean, people don't realize what God did. It's not that He did 10 plagues. That's nothing to God. You know, He could have wiped them out with a plague. We know that. You know, when the Black Plague hit Europe in 1348, do you know how many Europeans died? Over 100 million Europeans. They say it killed 1/2 of Europe. For God, it's not a big deal. It's very simple to do. So, like I say, he could have decimated Egypt by killing out half the population, which He's done. You know, there's always plagues. And then the Jews would have just picked themselves up and left, because there's nobody to stop them. And then God could have appeared to them in the desert. He didn't do that, which is interesting. God went into Egypt, and He destroyed Egypt in the Tum'ah. That shows you the power of God. You see, that's a very important idea. You know, God doesn't need purity to save you. You see, in fact, there's a very interesting pasuk. It's a very big secret, this pasuk. It's in Eov, and it's the secret of the Por Aduma, the red heifer. It says there, Umiyitein tor mitome. Who's the one that can create tahara, purity, mitome, from tumah? Right? How can you create purity from tumah? It's impossible. But the secret is that God can make somebody tomei, tohor. He could do that. So He doesn't have to come in and rescue you from tahara. He can come in and destroy the tum'ah in the tum'ah itself, because Eino Milvadoi. Because besides God, there is nothing else. Tum'ah is not an impediment to God, you see. And the same thing with the Galut in Egypt. So that's an important idea. Just like God came to Egypt in the middle of the Tum'ah, because Chazal tell us that the Tum'ah of Egypt was the greatest of all in terms of the Tum'ah. In fact, that's why the Jews were in the Mem Teshai Tumah. Where did they get that from? Well, they got that from Egypt. See, because Egypt was the Mem Teshai Tumah, the 49 gates of Tumah, right? So what does that mean? That means God went into an environment of the 49th level of Tum'ah. He went in, he yanked the Jews out. That's astounding. You see, why? Because he wasn't interested in getting the Egyptians to chase them out, or where he would kill the Egyptians and they just walk out, right? No. God doesn't need to do that. God is such an ultimate power that he can go into the Tum'ah itself and pull them out, which is exactly what he did. And the reason why he did that is because the Jews needed to have enlightenment. That's what it's all about. The Geulah is all about moichen. Moichen means a brains, Kabbalah, or the concept of awareness, enlightenment, consciousness, you see. So what we begin to understand is something very important, that if this is the beginning of the end of the Galut of America, right, God doesn't have to chase them to Israel. He doesn't have to do that at all. You know, he's going to come into America, right, and enlighten America, the Jews in America. Because that's the job of Mashiach ben Yosef. There will be an enlightenment in America itself, you see. And that's the pasuk that God says, I will gather you from there, not from Israel, but umishom mikabetzcho. From there I will gather you. Which means that obviously, Kitzei means the end of the earth, or the end of the heaven, I should say. But that's Tum'ah. You know, if the Jews are at the end of heaven, do you imagine what Tum'ah? That's Richuk. That's the furthest they can ever get from God. But why are they so far away? Because they are in the land, or the essential idea of Tum'ah. And America is essentially Tum'ah. It is steeped in Hashkafa, corruption, you know, same-sex marriages, you name it, pleasure, you know, or materialism. That's all they know. How much spirituality isn't this really is there in this country and so on, you know? So that's why. So God says, I will redeem you from there, just like Egypt. I will come in and take you out from the 49th level of evil, Tumah, which is basically where America is now, even though we don't realize that, you see. And I will take you out, and that's Moichem. That is why we begin to understand that the Geulah can happen in America, that the exile can end in America, not through, you know, terrible suffering or fear, frightened, where everybody's going to run away, you see. He could do it in America, no problem. But just like he did it in Egypt, he awakened them, the whole Kerch of Kedusha and Moichen in Egypt, through the Mashiach ben Yosef, who is Moshe Rabbeinu. He can do it. He will do it also in America. That's why when you think about that, what's more likely is if this is the end of the exile, you know, then God will do it in America. And I once mentioned to you a midrash where it says at the end of time, it says Yishmael will seek and they will conduct 3 wars of terror. The last one will be against the great city of Rome. I mentioned that. And what is the great city of Rome? Rome, of course, we know, the great Rome is now America. That's basically who a president is. He's an emperor. He's the equivalent of a Roman emperor, America. You see, and then it says is that he's going to watch as Yishmael and America, Edom, Esav, fight one another, which is exactly what's happening, you see. And then what he will do is that he will watch, and that's the Mashiach. It says Semach David. It doesn't say David. It says Semach David, the outgrowth of David. Who's the outgrowth of David? So basically, according to the Ari, that's the Mashiach ben Yosef. In fact, we pray about the Mashiach ben Yosef in the Tefillah. It's Samech David in Shmona Esrei. So the Ari says, who is Semach David? It should just say it's David. Who's the Tzemach David? That is Mashiach ben Yosef. You see. So the Medrash says Tzemach David, which is the Mashiach ben Yosef. So he's going to watch this war between Edom, Esau, and Yishmael, the Bnei Yishmael, which is exactly what's happening. That God is warring, that America is warring with Yishmael. I mean, this is what's going to happen with Iran, that there will be a war, and so on, And then it says, Umisham, he's going to watch it, Umisham, and from there, Yovei le'Eretz Yisrael. He will go to Eretz Yisrael. What does that tell us? That he's not in Eretz Yisrael. He's in exactly, right, where the Klippa is, where the Tum'ah is. You see, because that is where God is going to come. God is going to come to America to take the Jews out. You see, to take the Jews out of Israel. You see, that is where. Just 1 second, please. Yeah, hello, everybody there?
Yeah.
Good. So that's what's really happening. You see, what's happening is that God does not have to meet the Jews in Israel. Just like in Egypt, and that's the model. Just like he went into the Tum'ah, Mem Teshai Tum'ah, and he had Moshe Rabbeinu, who basically was the Mashiach, take them out, because that was the Last Galut. It was supposed to be the Last Galut. He's going to do the same thing in America. He's going to take them out of America, you see, and he's going to because the Galut of America is terrible. Most Jews in America are gone, you see. So therefore, it is very likely, and I believe this will be so, is that Biden will not win. It'll be Trump, and I believe that the Democrats will be decimated. You see, because Trump still has to do things for Israel. Because remember, Trump was a Gilgul of Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, which I spoke about, right, in the last year. I spoke pretty much about him, Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, and so on, Trump has much more to do for Israel. Because the foundational idea of Trump, or rather Marcus Aurelius or Esav, is Esav said, Yehi lecha sheloch, let that which is yours be yours, which means that not only are the brachot yours, Yaakov Avinu, but Eretz Yisrael is yours, because that's what God promised to Avraham and Yitzchak. So when Esav said to Yaakov, that let that which is yours be yours, he's not just talking about the brachot, which is the whole job of Tikkun. He's talking to Yaakov about Eretz Yisrael, that this is the inheritance of the Jewish people, you see. So I believe Trump has yet to finish the job. So therefore he will win. But besides winning, my feeling also is that it will decimate the Democratic Party. Because the Democratic Party is a terrible party of evil. We don't even know how evil these people are. We're now just beginning to see that they're insane. The liberal Democrats just sit back and do nothing while people rampage in the streets, murder, loot, burn, and kill. It's unbelievable what these guys do. And everybody's cowering. Why? Because everybody's afraid to be called a racist. You see. And the reason why everybody is afraid to be called a racist is because of the media. The media is completely behind the liberal Democrats. So America has been taken hostage. It's incredible. It's a tremendously evil party. And they're the ones who are responsible for the unbelievable sexual perversion of America and so on. So I believe in the end of time, God will decimate them because of their evil. So therefore, what we need to look forward to, you see, is not a panic to get out of America. what we need to look forward to, which will be miraculous, just like Moshe Rabbeinu, what he did was miraculous, is some type of rehabilitation, some type of tremendous mochen, awareness of spirituality. Now, we don't know how that's going to happen, because unfortunately the Jews are so far behind. They are so far gone. How many Jews don't even know they're Jewish? How many Jews are married to Goyim? They have kids that are Goyim, and so on. I mean, it's unbelievable, the assimilation and the intermarriage and so on. So somehow that has to change. And that will. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu changed Egypt. How? Because he introduced the Makkas. But remember, the essential idea of the Makkas was the Geulah, it was the revelation of God. It wasn't just to punish the Egyptians, you see. And Moshe Rabbeinu changed the consciousness of the Jewish people, you see. So when the Jews left Egypt, they were about to leave the Memtesh Shari Tumah, the 49 levels of Tumah. They had done tshuva, you see, and therefore they were worthy. So just like Moshe Rabbeinu changed the whole consciousness, awareness of Jews through a miracle called the 10 plagues, which is the Geulah of the 10 Sfirot, right? It's going to happen also in America, I believe. The same idea that something will happen where you're going to have the Geulah of these 10 Sfirot again. And that's really what's going to happen, is that the aura of the Sfirot have to be revealed, because the Jews, that's the whole concept of a tikkun process. You see, that the Jews have restored all the light, the energy, the Kedusha, back into the Sfirot. And therefore they will be energized, and they will begin to shine, illuminate, you see. So that is what's going to happen to America, you see. And again, like I said, the model of all of this is Egypt. You see. So therefore, in a summary, the Geulah is the end of the Galut, of the end. It is not fear, It is redemption, which is Ha'ora. And Ha'ora means enlightenment, because that's the whole point of the Mashiach. It's not why the Jews are frightened and they're biting their nails because they're so panicked. It is to begin what's called re-education. The Jews have to be re-educated in terms of who they are, the greatness of who the Jews are. And therefore, once that happens, then you can see the entire world is changing. You see, something will happen to Israel. Well, anyway, Netanyahu seems to have one foot out the door, because he's the heir of Rav. You see, and forget about Gantz. He's just absolutely terrible. And he's already falling in the polls, Gantz, down to 10 seats. But in any case, something will happen, just like it happened. 3 elections, they couldn't have a government. That is the beginning of the end. So you could say that they're holding on by their fingernails. That's what they're really doing. And they already got one foot out the door. And God will bring an event that will throw them out, you see, and bring in somebody else who will be the intermediary, you see, between the Erev Rav, which is the last Galut of the Jews, the intermediary between that and Mashiach ben Yosef, you see, which is really absolutely fascinating. So it's interesting to watch how both of these things are simultaneously happening. You see, that we are facing an election in America, which is a crossroads for America. And the second thing happened is the whole government in Israel is in disarray. They don't know what they're doing. You see, they're like all panicked because of COVID. And they're also losing their popularity. You see, so it's almost like certain things have to happen, which I once mentioned. The Golus has to end by an intensification. Just like Egypt. When Moshe Rabbeinu came, the Galut got worse. You see, because now the Jews had to gather straw at night, which was crazy. So the Jews looked at it, it's terrible. It's even worse for us, So not only is the Galut not ending, it's getting worse. And even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't understand what was going on. So we know at the end of Shemot, he ran back to the Rebbeinu Shalom and said, what's going on? Why are you sending me if it gets worse? So God says, don't worry, now you will see what I will do. And the reason why God did that, because he had to remove the last Kitrugim. He had to correct justice, because that has to be satisfied. And he did it with an enormous intensification of the end. We are looking at an incredible intensification of the Jewish people. Look how many Jewish people died. Gedolim, manhigim, leaders. There's so many tzaddikim. There's so many Jews who are so righteous. Look how many Jews died. And this is a major kapara for the Jewish people, tragically, you see. We are looking at an incredible accelerated process of what is happening, you see. And this has to happen before the Geulah. But just like it happened then, that it got worse, and all of a sudden there appeared a Mashiach ben Yosef, who raised the consciousness of the Jewish people, and that was the end of the last Galut. Same thing here. There will be an individual who will rise, that will raise the consciousness of the Jewish people, and that will end the Galut, because it's the last one. Now, we don't know how, who it is, how it will happen. But one thing you can be sure, it's going to be something that in your wildest dreams you could not have imagined. That I can tell you now. Okay? Wow. That was a whole shiur.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope it answers the question.
What is it going to be?
Can you speak louder?
Any idea what it is going to be?
Do I have an idea of what?
Of what could happen.
What is this thing that we can't imagine?
Our wildest dreams. You have any?
Your wildest dreams, huh? Well. Look, a lot of it will be where all of a sudden you wake up someday and you have a feeling of some sort that you want to get closer to God, you see. That you want to hear the word of God, you see. And then people will seek out, the Jews will seek out people who seem to know the word of God. Which is interesting, because there are some people who have a tremendous insight into, what does God want. So I believe that something will awaken them. You see, it could be an unbelievable event, miraculous, and people are going to wake up and say, wow, there's something going on. People recognize that it's messianic, that there is no other explanation. And then they're going to go and seek God, you see.
That's why
and they're going to seek individuals. What was that?
So that's why we seek you.
Well, it's interesting that I seem to be one of the few people that seem to have a grasp. What was that?
We want it to be enlightened, and we have this urge to keep growing and learning, and we're taking classes every single day, and that's why we got you, because I think we already have this thing of this thirst for the Torah more than ever before. It's every single day. It's every single day with studying.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. Because
I'm sure
people have to have an awakening. There has to be some type of a thirst.
I have a thirst every single day.
Yeah,
what was that?
We have it.
Yeah, we all have it.
We have that thirst.
Yeah. So imagine it. What was that?
Not everybody has it. That's the problem.
God will determine that. Remember what it says in the Navi, that in the end of time, there will be a thirst and a hunger, not for bread and not for water, but to know the will of God. There's a pasuk like that, right? That at the end of time, right, there will be a great hunger in the land, not for bread and not for water, but to know the will of God. What does that sound like to you?
Now.
that's what that is that something will happen that will awaken the neshamot of the Jewish people. And all of a sudden they're going to say, maybe I should find out more about Judaism, you see? And then you never know. Maybe all of a sudden people who have some idea, they're all of a sudden going to be in demand. Now that would be interesting. You know what I'm saying? So one never knows, There are times, even in American history, for instance, after the 1967 war, if you remember, people recognized this as miraculous because they realized this is a biblical prophecy that the Jews actually got their land back and they got Jerusalem back. There was like a tremendous understanding that this isn't normal, that a biblical prophecy was fulfilled. So there was a tremendous awakening at that point in 1967. The problem was, of course, is that, it wasn't enough. But in the end of time, it will be enough, you see. And there will be a thirst, and that thirst will spread because it'll be the engine running the thirst will be ruchi, will be the in some way the Spirit of God awakening everybody, you see. And that will be Shlei Kederach HaTeva, you see. And as a result of that, people are going to begin coming back, and that will spill over to other Jews, which will then spill over to other Jews. You see, it won't stop. You see, why? Because what will motivate them is some internal drive. The neshamot of Klal Yisrael will have been motivated, will be turned on, as they say. And people are going to begin seeking. And that's what the Navi says, that in that time there will be tremendous thirst and hunger. But like I say, not for bread or water, but to know the Word of God. Well, what's he talking about? How's that going to happen when America is completely directed toward physical materialism and pleasure? And the answer is that something will happen, which is messianic, you see. And that together will come together with the release of the Mashiach ben Yosef. In other words, Kabbalistically, that will be when Yesod, which is the 9th Sfirah, combines with Malchut, and that will be the release of the Mashiach ben Yosef from his prison.
Oh, the klipa.
You see?
Second order of. Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
So I learned that these 3 weeks, they say that each week is connected the 3 sefirot, the 3 top sefirot. Is that correct?
Well, you have what's called the Shiva de Nechemto, the 7 weeks of consolation, right?
Right.
That's after Tisha B'Av, right? That's what they're called. Yeah. So you could look at it as a 3 weeks, right? And then you could look at it as 7 weeks of Nechama, right? So altogether they're 10.
So then you have the full 10 sefirot until Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, that's right. But these are all Kabbalistic concepts, you see.
We like Kabbalistic stuff. You can teach us more.
What was that?
We like Kabbalistic concepts.
Okay. I try to supply you with that information.
Okay. So I have 2 questions.
Yes.
One, when Mashiach does come, what is Moshe's role in it? Because now you said there's going to be Mashiach ben Yosef.
What is whose role?
Moshe Rabbeinu.
Well, you have to remember one thing, that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Torah comes through him, because he's the giver of the Torah. Right. So, in a certain sense, he's the shirish of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. You see? Now, what his exact role will be, right, will probably be, it's like the grandfather, maybe he'll be a consultant, however that works, of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. You see, it's not clear what his role will be, but he will be clearly part of that triad. You see, part of that mission to bring the Jews back. You see, but it's not clear what his role is.
Eliyahu and Navi come in with this.
Well, Eliyahu Navi comes in after Mashiach ben Yosef. He is the one who will usher in Mashiach ben David. That's his job, yeah. And like I say, he will announce that. We don't know how, but he will announce the coming of ben David, you see. Because I told you, Mashiach ben Yosef, his job is very difficult. His job is like a woman in childbirth, The one who is the obstetrician is Mashiach ben Yosef, right? The one who's the pediatrician is ben David. So Mashiach ben Yosef is the one who's got to change everything. So he's got to go from Tum'ah, the world from Tum'ah, he's got to bring it to Tahara, you see. And once it's Tahara, then the whole concept of the Tahara of the Bria, and therefore the Messianic light, really comes down where everybody will be Nevi'im and so on, That's Mashiach ben David, you see. So those are the basic two roles of these two individuals.
I have another question.
Yes.
The war of Gog and Magog, the quick war, what is that, this quick war?
Well,
bomb?
Say that again? What?
Could it be an atomic bomb?
No, I do not believe it will be an atomic bomb. What would be the point? No. But there will be a conflict.
I thought we're all going to die when he comes.
What was that?
Isn't the war of Gog and Magog and he's the descendants of Yafet, there's going to be so many dead people, it's going to take 7 years to bury them?
Yeah, but as I once mentioned, I think I mentioned it, is that World War II, the Holocaust, absorbed or satisfied that prophecy.
Okay,
if you think about it.
Quick war that we have to have again.
Well, essentially, what is Gog and Magog from the land of Magog? What is that? And the answer is that is the last chance that the Klippa has to overturn the Kedusha. That's the end. So in the end, there's a second uprising, just like in Egypt. Gog and Magog, the equivalent of that in Egypt, was Kriyas Yamsuf. That's really what it was. When Paroi tried to reassert himself and again take the Jews back to Egypt. And that was the last chance of Tum'ah to resurge. That's Gog. Same idea. In the end, the Klippa realizes that it's dying, and they try to take over. So what that means is that in some way, somebody is going to realize that their way of life is ending, especially the Satan, you see. So he's going to create a war against Mashiach ben Yosef. Now, it doesn't mean a military war, but no question there will be a tremendous conflict. Now, that can manifest in many ways. It can manifest in terms of the UN, which I think is the way it'll go. Well, all of a sudden, the nations of the UN, because they hate the Jewish people, they hate Israel, in some way, is going to try to pass laws or really try to hamper the Jewish people, you see. And Mashiach ben Yosef will go against the United Nations. United Nations is really the entire world combined. It's really what it is. It's where all the nations sit together and they hate the Jewish people. So there will be a conflict. But the conflict is basically Tum'ah, is Klippa, is evil, to try to overthrow holiness or good. It's the last chance. That's really what it is. You see?
Another of my question. Remember how you said that Evel was Mashiach ben David and Cain was supposed to be Mashiach ben Yosef, and Yehuda and Yosef were also supposed to be the two Mashiachs. There's one, they're always opposing each other. If Moshe was supposed to be one of the Mashiach, who was the opposing one with him?
Where?
In Mitzrayim. Because Moshe would have been the Mashiach. Who would have been the other Mashiach?
I mean, who would have been the Mashiach ben David?
Yes.
Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yes? Is that your question?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you something very interesting. Do you remember by the Chet Egel?
Yeah.
Who was the only one who died? Do you know?
Hor.
Who? Hor.
Didn't hear him?
Who was Hor?
The son of Miriam, the nephew of Moshe.
Yes, and who was the father of Hor?
What's his name? Elav ben Yefuna?
Yeah, and who was he a descendant of?
He's a descendant of, wait, don't tell me, Mashiach ben Yosef.
No, he was a descendant of, no, we're not talking about Ben Yosef, we're talking about Ben David.
Yeah, he's a descendant of Yehuda. He was the tribe of
That's
Yehuda.
it, right? But isn't Yehuda the Mashiach ben David?
Yeah, that's what you said. Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. So it probably would have been Hor.
Wow.
I was the whole week I was trying to figure out who it was.
Yeah. And in fact, and since there was a Chet Egel, there was no more Mashiach ben David. It was gone. In fact, Moshe Rabbeinu was Mashiach ben Yosef, and God told him, Leich Rei, go down. You cannot be Mashiach. You see? So Moshe Rabbeinu was forced to descend, and he was no longer Mashiach ben Yosef. Right? And the one who was supposed to be Mashiach ben David, Hor, who was a descendant of Yehuda, because then there was no David yet. So the Mashiach was supposed to come from Yehuda, we know, because that's where kingdom comes from. He died because there was no necessity for Mashiach ben David.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
I was trying to figure it out. Thank you.
Well, you got it half right, Hor. The only thing you had to figure out is who Hor was a descendant of.
I know that he was from Nachshon, which is the tribe of Yehuda.
Exactly. That's right. You see? So isn't that amazing? That the only one who died by the Chet Egel was Hor, because that was the end of the messianic opportunity. You see? So there was no need for Mashiach ben David, because he couldn't come anyway. You see?
There's three bits, the things, As, Shem, and Mashrit. As, Aharon could handle Mashrit, Moshe, and Hor was able to handle Chema, and then they killed him.
Yeah, exactly. So God allowed it to happen. Why? Because the whole messianic opportunity failed.
But they killed him before the Egel was made.
No, but it was in the process of being made, because he opposed it.
Meaning you can't make it, and then they killed him.
Yeah, he opposed it. That's why they killed him.
And they threatened Aharon.
And then they threatened Aaron, exactly. Aaron realized they're going to kill him. You see? So he acquiesced. You see, but Hor opposed, and they killed him. But the underlying idea is that he probably was going to be Mashiach ben David, right? And there was no point in that, for the obvious reason that was the end of the whole chance. You see? Isn't it amazing how everything fits?
So, Rabbi, what do you think about the resurgence of the COVID? Do you still think it's for Pachad Mavet, for us to, for people to still wake up?
Yes. Oh, yeah. We're not over with COVID. COVID is doing what it does. Panic. Remember I said that the main fear is Pachad Mavet, if you remember the Shiur.
Yes.
Yeah. The whole world is frightened, not only because of the possibility of death, but the real reason why they're frightened is the economy is shot. People are worried in terms of what they're going to do, how they can make a living, paying mortgages, paying rents, food. I mean, there's so many things that are all put on hold, because of this. You see? I mean, there's a tremendous pachad. I mean, in Eretz Yisrael, 800,000 people are out of work. You know what I'm saying? And this is for months. This is from the beginning of March. Imagine a guy has no income for 4.5 months. And nobody knows when the end is in sight. You know what I mean? There is no end in sight. And this, all of it is pachad mavet, that the world needs a massive cleanup campaign. But what is interesting, it's not just a cleanup campaign on Jews. Tragically, there's so many Jews who have died. But it's a cleanup campaign on the entire world. Because like I mentioned, a messianic time is a tremendous merit, even for the goyim. You see? So therefore, there has to be some type of a cleanup, even for the goyim. You see?
Amazing how all the goyim are not following the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, and very, very badly. I keep seeing it all over the news, and I feel that that's why Hashem's so upset. I feel like it's really the Dor HaFlaga all over again, waging war against Hashem.
Yes. Yeah. We live in a country that is that based on the Torah is tremendously corrupt, you know, and tremendously deviant morally. You see, tremendous amount of the negation of morality. So we live in many ways. Look, as good as America is, and America's a lot better than everybody else, you know. It's a tremendously corrupt country. They are steeped in Gashmias. That's all that counts. You know, how many people think of God on a daily basis? Ask yourself that. Does anybody think of God at all? No. Right. Yeah, they're all into, well, how much money am I going to make today? How's the market doing? You know, and so on. Who thinks of God anymore, really? It's almost like God is gone, in a certain sense, from the consciousness of mankind. You know? Most people are into Ilam Hazeh. They don't think of God anymore. You know? Look, even Catholicism.
So, Rabbi, so through the learning that we're doing, especially with you, I feel like the Pachad Mavet, I feel is less for me, because I see things more clearer and in a bigger picture and a broader scale. So more of an excitement to just witness things come about. I look at life differently. But is that am I not supposed to do that because we should have the Pachad Mavet? Like, what's the...
No, on the contrary, what you're doing is great. You are ahead of the whole pack. Oh yeah, no. On the contrary, you know, you must have a special zchut that God has allowed you to have consciousness, moichen, before the other people. This is not an accident.
We've been working on our consciousness
for 10 years.
Yeah, for a good, not 10, it was a good 8 years of working just on our thoughts. And
so that's great.
And we're learning about just the power of our thoughts. And then, so when COVID came along, we were more stronger, because also it led into bitachon, it led into emunah. It was like a doorway into all things that we've been working on for years. So once COVID came, we had more armor than most. But now with all the Torah learning and with you and seeing things and praying for, you know, clarity and to be the veil being lifted and all these bigger vessels for bigger blessings, like you just see life totally different.
Yes, that's right.
And all I want to do is share it with everybody, but nobody's ready to hear it.
Exactly. That's part of the problem. You know, that's part of the problem.
I keep telling them even if they don't want to hear it, Rabbi.
You keep what?
I keep telling them even if they don't want to listen, I make them hear what I have to say.
Well, Rachel, you're always that way, right?
Yes.
No, but I have to tell you, you don't know how many people I got to go to classes and pray.
Oh, yeah?
got a shul. You have no idea.
We play.
Wow, you're a one-woman missionary.
Yes.
Rabbi, I'm a testament. She's God bless her. Yes, she is.
Yeah, she's a one-woman man, which is extraordinary. It's very good, Whose idea was it to get me?
Amy, me.
Oh, okay, yeah. That you're the first one, of course, I spoke with. Yeah, is that because of the shiurim that you heard?
Yeah, we were listening to you online.
You didn't even know.
Yeah.
We were listening to you on. You were recording. I've been listening to you for the past couple of years. You were on the internet, and every time you came out with the YouTube, I would listen to it.
So does Corona have to finish for Mashiach ben Yosef to come?
Yes.
Or to begin to appear?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
And how does it end? Do you think with a vaccine, or you think it's just going to disappear?
No, it'll end with a vaccine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, Rabbi, I don't want to take a vaccine or give it to my children either.
Well, you don't have to, because there's a thing called herd immunity, which means that if 80% of the people get it, or they're vaccinated against it, then nobody gets it, because the virus cannot survive. Anybody who has a vaccine, and most people will take it, then the virus will die. And even from those people who didn't take it, since most of the time the virus dies, there's hardly anything to go around. So there's a thing called herd immunity.
Vaccine is a bad thing for
what was
the
that?
body.
What?
You don't feel that the vaccine is a bad thing for the body. Let's say they make it mandatory for the children to get it before they go into schools.
I'm worried about side effects.
I know. Look, I'm not really knowledgeable enough to be on either camp.
Got it.
But I do know there's a strong anti-vax, and then there's a strong vax. But I'm not knowledgeable enough to make some type of determination.
Oh, would you take the vaccine?
I think I would, yeah. I mean, I would see what happens, obviously when other people. But if I see that it's okay, basically, and there's no side effects, and also it depends on who is going to develop it. I think if Israel developed it first, I think to me that would be more reassuring than maybe if some Italian company developed it first,
Got it.
It depends on who, because you have to be able to trust it.
Yes.
And this is always a problem. Who made the vaccine? And how do they know it works? What tests have they given?
Say that usually vaccine takes 2 years to develop, but they want to develop it very quickly. So a lot of people say that this vaccine is not so healthy, and they don't know the side effects.
Yeah, but you have to remember also, one of the reasons why it takes so long is because there's only a small amount of money. So everything takes very slow. But they're pouring in hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into many companies, So what they are doing is accelerating. You see, they're accelerating a lot of the stages much quicker. So, what it would have taken maybe 2 years to go from stage 1 to stage 2, and a lot of it, is bureaucracy. It's not the vaccine is no good. You know what I'm saying? It's bureaucracy, you see? So therefore that is being waived. So as a result of that, I think it's going faster. You see what I'm saying? So, so that is not necessarily bad. Because obviously it's a crisis, Is
there any Pesukim that refer to when Mashiach ben Yosef will emerge?
If there's any Psukim?
Yeah, is there any references that, they say hint when he would come or something like that? How they say that...
well, the references are not a year. Nobody really knows that.
Sure, but they say that David will come, Benisan Atidin Le'Gael. So we say
so in that sense, but that's not a date.
No, but...
that's not a year, it's a...
Because
you see, what you have to do is the date is not the critical thing. What the critical thing is the historical events happen. You see what I'm saying? That's the critical thing. So if you know what has to occur, just one second. You understand what I'm saying?
So if we know what has to occur...
Yeah, what you have to know is not so much, because there are things that have to occur before. Like one of the things that have to occur before is that the Jews have to get back Eretz Yisrael, right? Mashiach is not going to come without Eretz Yisrael, because ultimately all the Jews have to go back. Well, guess what? It happened, you see? The same thing. The exiles have to end, and that's happened. No country can hold the Jews back. The Jews can now leave, basically, everywhere they want to go. Even in Iran or Syria, all the Jews left, you see? So that's another concept, you see, in terms of that, you know? And then the world has to descend to terrible immorality. You know, those are Gemara and Sota and so on. So you have to look at that. And not only that, the Internet is one of the ideas. Because the Internet allows global connectivity. Because the Mashiach ben Yosef initially will come through Teva, natural means. It's not going to be miraculous at first. That's only later.
Through YouTube.
What? YouTube, or the ability to give a shiur, and you can have 1 billion people watching it.
Wow.
You see? So the Internet is a way that one guy can get on the Internet and give a shiur to hundreds of millions of people in real time, simultaneously.
Wow.
So that's what you have to look at more, you know, than just in terms of a date. But like I say, you know, a pandemic like this, you know, is very. And besides, one of the very important ideas is also that most Jews are disappearing. You're watching the disappearance of Judaism. Never happened before. Jews are disappearing in America, South America, and Europe. The assimilation, the intermarriage, unaffiliation, they're all disappearing. So the question then is, so who's the Mashiach going to come to? So that's another sign that we're at the end, you see. So you have to add all these things up, you see. And then you begin to realize that we are very, very close.
So Rabbi, if you had to guess, what's your time frame? You think like a couple of months Yosef comes, in a year? Like, what would you put your money on?
It's hard to say, you know, but I think we're much closer than we are further. You know,
okay, so what's
much
that?
closer. Well, who knows? Maybe next year. Remember, the critical concept is not when he comes. The critical concept is when he's released.
Which is hopefully in 2 weeks from now.
Well, you never know, maybe.
We hope
At
so.
some point in time, he will be released from his klippah. So even though you don't know who it is because he's first released, right? But he's been released. And then he will begin to grow. And that's the critical point, you see.
Yes. So it takes time for him to grow, and then eventually that's when he'll start experience.
Correct. Yeah. Takes time. Anyway.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Okay.
Rabbi?
Yes,
I
who's
had
this?
2 questions. It's Elise. I had 2
Yes.
questions. One was you were going to discuss, I think, in the future classes, the difference between the tikkun for Ashkenazim and Sfardim.
I thought I was going to do it today, but somebody asked me the question.
I thought so too. Okay, so we're going to get to that. And then the other question was the difference between you were giving the numbers last week, and why is it?
Well, that's part of the shiur. Yeah, why 70 and 49, right?
Yes.
I know.
Exactly. So it's going to come.
Yeah,
we're getting to it.
That's part of the shiur.
Patience. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Rabbi.
I can only give one shiur per, you know.
Thank
Rabbi,
you, Rabbi.
hey,
Thank
we
you.
loved your share tonight.
It was so uplifting. Thank you.
Yeah, listen, it's a real eye-opener, you know. Look,
nice.
Look, most people don't know this. They don't know this material.
No.
So you're hearing stuff that's really hardly known.
Yeah.
You know?
True.
I hope you recognize
We're very
that.
blessed. We're
Thank
very
you.
blessed. Thank you.